Have you been watching carefully? Throughout the series of reviews, there have been little hidden messages throughout. How many did you see? I'm sure you're all wondering then, what is the meaning of party?
There is no reason, it's just funny. Enjoy the review.
Are you sitting comfortably? Then we'll begin.
There are some spoilers for this week's episode coming up, so look away now because I'm going to talk about some of the key events in this episode. The finale opens with the Doctor going to an American diner where Clara is seen scribbling with boredom. This is of course the same diner from 2011's episode The Impossible Astronauts, which they catch on to later, which I'm glad they did, otherwise I'd be calling it out for being a reused set. If you listen carefully, upon entrance we hear the sound of a rendition of Queen's Don't Stop Me Now, similar to that of, or it might even be the same song, the performance we saw in The Mummy on the Orient Express last year. This opening was great because of a couple of things. Firstly, because the Doctor's guitar rendition of Clara's theme works a lot nicer than Clara's sappy piano version. The latter version sounds far too innocent for a character with so much flair to her. The version the Doctor is seen playing sounds more like a tribute to the two's adventures together. The second thing I love about this scene establishes so brilliantly the assumption that Clara's mind has been erased and not the Doctor's, which would change later on in the episode, but it certainly had me fooled. The title's role and Jenna Coleman's name is put back in there. As soon as the episode started, I'd simply settled with the fact that Clara will be on the payroll forever now. If the opening scene wasn't so brilliant, I might have been rather bitchy about this, but it wasn't, so Clara's inclusion is welcome for me as I wanted to know why she didn't know who Clara was. We're back on Gallifrey and for some reason we hear the stock sound effect of an eagle cry in the background. Strange, I thought eagles were from Earth. I knew from the moment Gallifrey was mentioned in this series that this episode would be where the majority of the budget would go to, and it certainly pays off. This backdrop with the Doctor walking in the desert is bloody gorgeous. Credit is given where credit is due, and I love the designs of the Gallifreyan city, both interior and exterior. The inner nerd in me kinda broke out when Gallifrey opened up because we've been waiting for an episode like this for a long time. It's just a shame that we don't spend an awful long time on it, when you consider all the time dedicated to a shielder at the end of the universe and Clara's segments in the retro TARDIS. The last 2/3 of this episode is dedicated to saving Clara, and the rest of the Gallifrey stuff is just sort of forgotten about. Inside the highest tower, our Lord and Saviour Rassilon stands high and mighty, wondering what to do about the hybrid. I love how Maester Luwin from Game of Thrones has now been resurrected as the president of Gallifrey. To be fair though, his performance is pretty good, and the casting team did a good job at choosing him for this episode. Considering we've had so many cameos from the Game of Thrones cast members in the past 2 years, it's about bloody time one of them was worthwhile. The Doctor goes back home and we see that little semi-bedroom from last year's episode Listen. A random old woman appears, and I'd really like to know who she is. Is that Mummy Who? Auntie Who? Long lost Mrs. Nesbit Who? I love how she didn't give his name away either. Very good writing there, Moffat, you massive fucking cock tease. Once again, Murray Gold creates an outstanding score for this episode. He must work very hard to create those new melodies every year, but the thematic use of the Doctor's theme that he wrote back in 2005 recurs throughout this episode. Obviously, this series celebrates 10 years since the revival, and I really think that shows through the music in the past 3 episodes compared to the rest of the series. The Doctor gets given some soup and the working class of Gallifrey then show up to watch him eat. Then again, he is basically an angel to the entire Time Lord race, and this is emphasised later when he wins over the army, so I guess these people would happily starve themselves for billions of years if it meant they could get a glimpse of the fabled hero of Gallifrey. A massive spaceship shows up and the sheer size is brilliantly represented by this comparison shot here. The Doctor makes a line in the sand, backs away from the ship and returns home. The General then personally visits the Doctor in a hilariously executed sequence where the Doctor closes the door to the man's face. Why these people didn't just jump in a TARDIS and make their way there instead of those massive CG planes is beyond me though, But then again, it seems almost like the opening to Star Wars, where a massive spaceship attacking a smaller one shows the sheer power of the Empire compared to the individuals who oppose the aristocracy. After several visits from several idiots, the president finally shows his face. This scene is where Donald Sumter's performance shines brightest as he gets impatient and grows angry, a complete polar opposite to the majority of performances I've seen him create over the past few years. Just as the firing squad shoot at the Doctor, we have this really excellently dragged out shot of the door to the Doctor that lengthens the cliffhanger to an uncomfortable amount of time, bringing tension to the forefront. This is great because I can see how this could have been executed in a typically comedic fashion, but our director Rachel Talalay, sorry if I pronounced your name wrong there dear, decided to make this part intense instead of the usual witty comments that would ordinarily follow. The Doctor takes command of Gallifrey and we return to face the Raven in order to save Clara from death. The scene then transforms into the beginnings of an LSD trip before Clara is then in the room with the rest of them. The Doctor then shoots the General, runs off with Clara, and then the General regenerates into a black female. Now I'm not sure if this was some kind of tongue-in-cheek joke about the Doctor probably not regenerating into a woman whilst Moffat's in charge, or if this is just the BBC's standard political correctness at work here. Either way, it's not a problem for me considering both Ken Bones and Tania Miller do a good enough job at playing basically the same role. Down in the depths of Gallifrey, Clara and Docky wander around for a bit discussing the neuroblock. It turns out that Jamie Reed Coral is back once again on those bloody Heelys in the background of these scenes.
You got me singing like, oh, never gonna find another love like you, like, oh, this will be the heartbreak heard around the world. Yeah.
There's some great design work here, and it's a shame that this shot here is all we really truly see of the sliders. Having said that, they do add a lot when describing how ghastly of a place Gallifrey really is. A planet ruled by a dictator where the poor have to live in the desert and has monsters below the decks of the city. I know I wouldn't want to live there myself. Despite the lack of screen time the sliders get, I really appreciated the amount of backstory they have, in that the dead are stored onto the hard drive and used as guards to stop intruders. This is really interesting considering this is very similar to what Missy did in last year's finale. We then encounter some old foes that tried to break into the database, where we see some weeping angels, Daleks and other standard monsters you'd expect for them to throw at us when they run out of ideas for what to put down there. Like, these monsters make sense to be in here, however they are just the generic run-of-the-mill monsters we've seen countless times before, making this scene look rather cheap compared to the rest. The Doctor and Clara then ramble on whilst trying to activate the Matrix. The guards come down and she finds out that the Doctor was in the confession dial for 4.5 billion years. However, instead of showing an ounce of gratitude for his actions and patience, she just bitches to him like he's done something wrong. If the Doctor wasn't so fucking whipped by Clara, I reckon he would have just turned around and bellowed, "You should be more fucking grateful!" But to be fair, I was under the impression that he was reset every time he died, so his mind wasn't running for 4.5 billion years, only the amount of time it took him to figure out he needed to punch a wall a few times. Even still, Clara could have been more appreciative of the Doctor's efforts. I know she's a strong independent woman and all, but come on. The Doctor then steals a TARDIS, and I really liked that we have a Gallifreyan representation of a TARDIS placed right in front of us. It's basic as fuck, but I like it, especially the interior too, revisiting the old retro look. I'm not entirely sure if this is a brand new set made for this episode, or if this is the original set just made shinier. If you know the answer, do spread the word to the good people in the comments section. Clara still has no pulse and a nasty tattoo on her neck, so we travel to the end of time itself to truly escape the Time Lord's grasp. There's a knock on the TARDIS door, and at first I thought we were going to return to that scene in last year's episode Listen, where Orson Pink travels to the end of time in Earth's first time machine. Oh yeah, I guess Danny Pink never had kids in the end, did he? So at the end of the universe, despite my prayers for an Orson Pink return were ignored, my least favourite character of the series sits smugly in her chair as she watches the universe end. Fortunately though, she is written into the episode splendidly and doesn't have much to say. Her character arc ends really well in this episode, considering such a comparatively awful line of stories we had to plod our way through in order to get to this resolution. Her self-proclaimed title becomes at last a reality when there is nothing but me. Her memory is rather inconsistent though, considering in the space of 800 years she barely remembered anything in The Woman Who Lived. Yet trillions of years later she still remembers that day in London where the Doctor's best mate was murdered. Speaking of the best mate, how did the Doctor not think through the TARDIS camera and microphone built into the outside when discussing what he was going to do to Clara to Maisie? Just whisper it to Maisie or move out of eyesight and earshot from the TARDIS man. Maisie does bring up a good question about the Doctor's parentage though. We know so little about his parents that it's entirely feasible he might not be entirely Time Lord. Missy is also brought up amidst this discussion, and I'd really like to know why she wasn't in this finale. Are they saving her for Christmas? I mean, that'd be great too, but even still, I just fucking love Missy, and it's a shame the only episode she was given were the first two. The Doctor then comes back to the TARDIS with intentions of wiping Clara's memory, and as they share some lovely dialogue, the music brings a lot of emotion to the scene once again, building up to the moments where the Doctor's memory begins to recede. But it was at this point where the Doctor started tripping balls that I suddenly realised this segment was about him, in that he would be losing the memory of her instead. This twist was so excellently executed, and his speech was just brilliant to listen to, especially the parts about cowardice and not eating pears because they're too squishy and making your chin wet. That was rather funny. I didn't shed any tears at this point, but I was very happy sad, which is a word I just made up to describe that I was feeling sad and happy at the same time. The Doctor's memories get erased and he wakes up where the episode began. I don't quite know where his guitar just magically appears from, considering the TARDIS doesn't appear until after Ashilda's TARDIS disappears, or how he drove to the diner when he doesn't have any money for that car that he's driving in at the beginning of the episode that clearly isn't his. The Doctor rounds up his conversation as Clara tries to hold back the tears, and I really appreciate that we finally see Capaldi actually playing the guitar instead of poor cuts away from him and moments of bad dubbing we've seen this year. Ashilda's TARDIS then impressively dematerialises around the Doctor and his TARDIS. Unfortunately, this event involving Clara and Ashilda travelling through space and time means they could probably show up as an invincible duo in the future of the series, which could get really shit considering the frequency of Maisie Williams' appearance in this series, and with Clara to be guaranteed with her. Or they might never be on Doctor Who again, that's fine too. I did find the diner spinning around in space rather amusing too though, so whoever animated that, good job, you made me laugh rather loudly. The Doctor then opens the TARDIS door, and I don't quite understand why time has suddenly shifted to the evening considering the harsh near horizontal light rays that are shining in through the TARDIS door, nearly blinding everyone for a nonsensical but aesthetically pleasing effect. The TARDIS boots up, the Doctor gets dressed, and the undisputedly best part of this episode came right here, when the blue sonic screwdriver flew into his hand. I have been on and off about the sonic sunglasses for a while now, but I can definitely say that after this evening's episode, I will not want them to see the light of day again. I mean, this screwdriver looks so fucking cool, and I've missed it. The Doctor then pulls a lever and Capaldi's music starts playing. I felt so bloody satisfied with the episode by this point, I was beaming from ear to ear. Look, they even used a GoPro shot effectively too. Nice job, guys. Let's try and get more of this good stuff into Series 10, yeah? So, did it suck? Jesus, I haven't had this much fun in a Doctor Who episode in a long time. I give this episode a 9 out of 10 as there was so much greatness that simply restored my faith in the show a little bit more. Great performances, music, pacing, writing, and the sonic fucking screwdriver is back, guys. What's not to like? The only gripes I have are with the few plot holes and minor irritations I had, but this episode is certainly one of the greats. But now this series is over, what am I going to do? Well, I've started work on a Star Wars review that will be out soon. I'll be reviewing the Christmas Doctor Who episode, and I'll be reviewing the new Sherlock when it comes out on New Year's Day. Beyond that, I'm going to review the rest of Harry Potter, as well as some of the older episodes of Who from the revival, because it's only fair that I rip apart some of those ones to shreds too. I won't be reviewing all of them, but stick around to see what I have to say on some of those after the new year. One final thing I want to share with you guys is this fantastic comment I received the other day from a guy named Here's Yo Smoothie. I'm just going to read it to you. So I've reached a conclusion. I think you had a twin in the room whom you absorbed. I'm assuming like an absorber-off, that would be hilarious. But a little bit of his brain is still alive in your head, and your subconscious knows he's there, but you're never alone when you watch Doctor Who. I am never alone when I watch Doctor Who though. I kind of watch it with some of the people I live with. But anyway, that's why you're so critical of it now. It all makes sense. Well, thank you for sharing your philosophy with us all, and I want to thank all of my subscribers for sticking around and watching my videos this year. Thank you to everyone who promoted me via word of mouth or promoting me in your own videos. I didn't quite expect to be getting 1,000-ish views per video, and you guys have really helped make that a reality. Don't forget to check out my other videos if you want more critical views of other things or other creations of mine. I'm gonna move closer to the microphone because then the sound will pick up easier. Weirdest outtake of 2015. The version the Doctor is seen playing sounds more like a tribute to the two's adventures together. Fuck's sake. No, you bastards. After several visits from the several, but our director Rachel Talele, what? Who said that? But our director Rachel Talele, I've done it again.
I give my super awesome girlfriend a 10 out of 10, and she completely is so much better than Doctor Who. Doctor Who sucks in comparison to her fabulousness, and she deserves a 10 out of 10 and definitely does not suck.
To the evening, considering the fuck. And that's it. That's the end of Doctor Who. Oh shit.